The financing of our nation should be maintained as the finance of one's own home.
Up next, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson grant exclusive interviews with State of the Union on this President's Day weekend. Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia is as close to a time capsule as it gets. It's where we found Bill Barker and Ron Carnegie, who have spent a combined 30 years in the shoes of two of our founding fathers. Think of them as presidential historians with great costumes. We drop back now to 1797. President Washington has made the decision to voluntarily step down from office. Mr. President, it is good of you to join us.
My pleasure, ma'am.
Let's start with the political questions. And first, you've decided 2 terms is enough. Why?
After my first term, many men convinced me that it was necessary that I remain in office for the betterment of this country. But now, the nation has matured to a point where I cannot be convinced of that. And I hope that I will be allowed to return home.
I think one of the other political questions that comes off as you prepare to leave office, that is the formation of political parties. You've been critical. You've looked askance at the idea that there might be 2 political parties that would drive politics. Why is that?
I hoped we never would have seen this introduction of parties into our shores. The alternating domination of one political party over another, spurred on by the spirit of revenge, will always drive a nation further and further from its better interests and greater counsels. It causes a man to be concerned not for being a servant to his nation, but rather to be a servant of his political party.
You have been known as a man of great morality. Have you ever told a lie, just even a little white one?
A man should always be guided by honesty and virtue. But, ma'am, I also was the commander-in-chief of our armies in the late war. I had under my authority a number of spies and engaged in spying upon the enemy and endeavoring to misinform our enemy by way of false numbers in newspapers and such as that. Obviously, I have on occasion been less than truthful.
And tell me, since there have been so many things written about you already and will clearly be things written about you in the future, what is the biggest misconception that you have read about yourself or heard about yourself?
A political party has made claims that I have wished for the office of president, that I perhaps wish to be a king, which has never been the case. Nobody could wish such an office less than I do, and North America is done with kings. And some of those who accuse me in the press know very well that this is the truth. And yet they feel free to say whatever they wish.
And yet you believe wholeheartedly in a free press.
I do.
Mr. President, we appreciate your taking the time.
Yes, sir, ma'am.
And in salute to our 3rd president, we move into the early 1800s with Thomas Jefferson, inventor and author of the Declaration of Independence, a president who inherited an $83 million national debt. Mr. President, you have in your term reduced the national debt by 1/3. What is the harm of a national debt?
It leads us into the necessity of becoming dependent upon government itself. That is my opinion, that if we allow stock jobbers, monocrats, Anglo-men, speculators to have their way, that they will pursue this debt in order to aggrandize their wealth and influence. And of course, that feeds upon the common man. The financing of our nation should be maintained as the finance of one's own home. The 3 particular principles. Take care of your pennies, and your dollars will take care of themselves. Never spend money you do not have, and do not purchase something simply because it is cheap.
Do you worry that there are things within the Constitution that will not stand the test of time, that 200 years from now or more, there will be things about the Constitution that the American people will want to correct?
Well, I am hopeful in the future we might rectify this idea of an electoral college, the right of the legislatures to decide on who should be the chief magistrate. In my opinion, it does not properly enact the voice of the people and may someday become a blot on our Constitution, which will make its hit.
So you fear that with this electoral system, there might be a time when a candidate would be popular among the people and still not become president?
Yes, I do, and that is in the human nature of politics to occur, I do believe.
And that would be a constitutional crisis then, would it not?
Well, yes, it would. And good heavens, could you imagine, were that to occur, that it might even come to the point of coming up before our Supreme Court?
Of the many things you have done, what do you want to have remembered centuries from now?
Oh, I would like to be remembered as the author of our Declaration of American Independence, of the Statute of Virginia for religious freedom, and as the father of a University of Virginia. By these three, as testimonials that I have lived, well, then I wish most to be remembered.
Mr. President, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure as well, ma'am.
You can find these gentlemen in the flesh in Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia. Back to this century now. Enjoy your President's Day. And this is State of the Union.